one told you life was gonna be this way? Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the old way. It's like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, or maybe your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you.
Que onda, way? Welcome back to Mr. D's class. How's it going? Let's talk about a man named Plutarco Calles. But to understand Calles and how that sneaky devil got into so much power, we first have to understand the rise of Obregón. So, last time we talked about the end of the revolutionary period. Obregón had a hell of a lot to deal with. First of all, 1 million dead Mexicans because of the Civil War, and second, an economic depression. All right? So, he had to do things and do things quick. First things first, he had to forgive Pancho Villa, have he and his generals retire, give him money, just throw money at the problem. He then went down to Morelos, where all the Zapatistas were, and he gave them as much territory as they could through a law he created in which they would be the ones that choose who gets what land. Anybody that challenged him, he tried to just pay them off. General, businessman, whoever you are, he just paid you off, because we know the story, el que no tranza no avanza in Mexico. He was granted major legitimacy due to a huge new powerful union, CROM, which now has over 1 million members thanks to one of his right-hand men, Luis Morones. Now, here's something I didn't go into in depth enough last time, and you gotta understand to make today's lecture make sense. Okay? So, remember we talked about the Bucareli Treaty last time. This was the one that basically granted Mexico recognition from America so long as Article 27 of its Constitution, which theoretically could have anything that's a foreign-owned in Mexico be nationalized by Mexico. It made it immune for anything that was in Mexico pre-1917. And they wouldn't tax any oil fields pre-1917 either. They were trying to pay for this horribly ruined economy. Now, what I didn't tell you was that the person who put forward this deal was one of Obregón's right-hand men named Adolfo de la Huerta. If you remember, he was one of the people that came forward alongside Calles for that Plan de Agua Prieta earlier in the story. All right. Now, Obregón didn't like that deal. He felt that de la Huerta pretty much sold out Mexico just to get America to support the deal. So, the elections were coming up in 1924, and Obregón refused to support de la Huerta for this huge screw-up concerning the Bucareli Treaty. And one thing that I didn't say is that the 1917 Constitution proudly forbids any re-election of the president. So finally we have a real election going on instead of some show like it's been in the past decade or so we've been studying. So the election of 1924, let me pause so you can copy it. Alright, so in this election, remember, Obregón did not like de la Huerta. Obregón liked instead Plutarco Calles, who we will see will be a huge player in the story of the post-revolutionary state. But we thought Villa had retired, but he came out and he supported de la Huerta. All right, so Villa comes out of nowhere in support of de la Huerta. Remember, he claimed to be retired. Unfortunately for Villa, they had had enough of him and they assassinated him. Obregón, moreover, pardoned the man who killed him. So just so you know who was responsible, really it was Obregón, who was sick and tired of Villa. We allowed you to retire. You wanted to come back into politics. You're bad, Villa. That was Obregón's take. Now, de la Huerta saw the writing on the wall. He did the old move to Veracruz, made his own Plan de Veracruz, but this one wouldn't be as popular as the previous 4 plans we've studied. In the Plan de Veracruz, he accused Obregón of controlling the courts, controlling Congress, and he guessed that basically Obregón would return to presidency after one term of Plutarco Calles. So he figured that Obregón was just playing the game. Now, Obregón was excited to be able to use his military know-how once again, and he completely defeated de la Huerta. He did so for multiple reasons. First and foremost, America recognized Obregón. As you remember, that Bucareli Treaty de la Huerta himself is the one that had it negotiated. And because they recognized Mexico, they gave Mexico American weapons, which means that the state had better weapons than any kind of rebel group would have at this point. Moreover, Morones' CROM, that's that Confederation of Regional Workers, of Mexican workers, gave him a huge boost of support in the countryside. And over 70% of the generals remained loyal to Obregón. a third, kind of listened to the Plan de Veracruz, but it did not really win the kind of fervor we've seen in the past. So, De la Huerta saw that he was pretty screwed, fled to Los Angeles, and that's where his story ends. Calles easily won the election in 1924, and Calles will be a huge player in this next series of lectures. So here we can see that this turned from Obregón and Calles against Villa and De la Huerta. So we can see how the soap opera is now shifting. Villa once again comes into the picture for one last time, though, because eventually Villa was assassinated. And remember, the assassin was pardoned by Obregón. How dare you come back out of retirement? Let me show you guys, I love this one. Wait, really quickly, let me show you this Game of Thrones reference. Like, la silla presidencial. As you can see, countless people have died trying to be the president of Mexico. It's just like the show Game of Thrones. So yeah, Obregón wins the battle against De la Huerta. Calles becomes the next president. And Villa was killed. So I've got two videos for you. First, one from this documentary I've been watching jointly.
As they drive down a main street, a sudden hail of bullets from the side of the road rains down on the car, leaving Villa and 3 of his men dead.
Entonces, el mismo gobierno mantuvo un silencio casi de castigo, ¿verdad?, para que no se hablara de Villa, para que no se dieran a conocer de manera positiva sus acciones de liderazgo, y queda fuera de la historia, ¿verdad?
Both Álvaro Obregón and his successor to the presidency, Plutarco Elías Calles, had fought against Francisco Villa. Now they see an opportunity to eliminate him from the official pantheon of revolutionary heroes. When Calles becomes president in 1924, he implements a national educational initiative which reaches even the illiterate poor in the rural areas. He also begins to institute agrarian and labor reform, but only to the extent necessary to keep the peace.
Calles was a political op.
All right, and this second one, now, you guys, once again, this is from that movie that I showed you in an earlier lecture, but I could not cut and paste pieces of it, so we've got to do a gangster move and just watch it right now. So watch with me on my screen the death of Pancho Villa. Oh.
His hacienda grande, with a secretary and 2 guards. And then, in the center of Parral,
Boom. Just like that. And remember, they pardoned the people that killed him. And there you can see that famous photo that I just showed you right now of Pancho Villa laying dead on the side. And there's every single revolutionary dead now. Now they're all dead. Before I was mistaken.
some say the government.
Alright, so back to the lecture, and one more time just so you can see that photo of Villa dead. This is a very, very famous photo taken right there. That photo is the one that you just saw in the video footage. Alright, so let's go to the second slide for today. Calles' politics, so I'll pause real quick so you can write this down. Alright, so, Plutarco Calles' election, the election of 1924, it's kind of a big deal. This is the first constitutionally legitimate election in Mexican history for like 20 years. And as soon as he was president, he appointed his main man, Luis Morones, this was the leader of CROM, that huge union, as Minister of Industry. But then things got a little dark, as they always do. All right? So remember, CROM's membership at this point is around 2 million Mexicans, and they finally fight for the 8-hour workday, and there's no strike, so that's really good. I cannot diffuse how great a thing that is. But as CROM became more and more influential in a larger entity, the benefits stopped trickling down to the average Mexican, and eventually Plutarco Calles began supporting management instead of the laborer. All right? And because of this supportive management over labor, we'll see that in the future, a more Marxist, left-leaning, the Confederation of Workers, the CTM, will eventually unseat CROM as the most popular union. This will be more relevant later when we talk about Cárdenas, the next big leader here. But just keep it in mind, CTM will take over CROM. Now, one other big piece of Gaius' presidency was how much he just hated the Catholic Church. Remember that I told you that each bit of the Constitution was slowly enacted. As you can see here, the labor rights part of the Constitution was enacted under Gaius, and so was the anti-church legislation. So what did he do? He encourages a national church, which will be independent from the Pope and the Vatican. So he doesn't want any more influence from Europe in Mexico. He also pushed locals to make sure that there are limits on priests, like make sure and see that there's only one priest per community. He even banned that outfit the priest has, that black outfit with the white collar. He banned clerical robes. I mean, this guy was really anti the Catholic Church, and it makes sense. I mean, with reason. The Catholic Church had dominated Mexican politics for a century, and the church was really, really against these anti-clerical laws, and a rebellion would be underway that we'll finish today's lecture with. So here we can see Gaius and Morones right there joined together. He would be his Minister of Industry, and here we can see eventually that the CTM, the more Marxist CTM, will unseat CROM in the future. Now, under Gaius, sadly but truly, priests were assassinated. I mean, this is a horrible photo, but this is what happened, and this was a huge shock to the world. Remember that the world is, even today, 2 billion Christians exist. It is the largest religion in the world, the Christian faith, the Catholic domination being one of the largest Christian sects. So it's a pretty big deal. I love this photo. These are Mexican nuns that are armed. Crazy, right? And here we can see the banner of the Mexican Christian liberators. Viva Cristo Rey. Live Jesus the King, the liberator. So let's look at this video in which CROM gets a bit dark and corrupt. So nothing gold can stay.
Liberator. He was manipulative. He was opportunistic. And much of what he did on the progressive side was a calculated move to make strategic concessions to the possibility of political rivalries or political dissidents. And in this respect, for example, his distribution of land had a lot to do with an attempt to continue to tame the tiger regarding agrarian reform. His so-called reforms of labor were, to a large extent, to try to sustain the support of unions.
It seems that for the first time, the Mexican workers will have national unions that will represent them. The largest is the CROM, the Regional Confederation of Mexican Workers.
The CROM gave the state some important muscle, some political and economic muscle. They also gave the ability to present themselves as the inheritors of the social and economic ideals of the Mexican Revolution.
The CROM thrives under the leadership of its charismatic leader, Luis Napoleon Morones. But in 1925, it seems to change direction. Morones accepts an appointment from President Gaius as the Minister of Commerce and Industry.
One of the negative features that was already visible in the CROM in the 1920s is the beginnings of the development of a corrupt group of labor bosses or labor tsars, of whom Luis Morones was one of the most fascinating examples, who begin to see their role as being more to deliver workers for the state than to use the state to bring benefits to their labor force.
El periodo callista es interesante porque refleja precisamente todas las contradicciones que se están viviendo en este momento. Calles, efectivamente, adopta posturas cada vez más y más conservadoras, especialmente en materia agraria, porque le parece que son improcedentes, improductivas para el desarrollo de México.
All right, as anything that exists, as soon as a huge organization gets too big, it just gets a bit evil. Let's get this last slide in. I'll pause so you can copy it. All right. The Cristero Rebellion, Cristero being the Christian rebellion, 1926, the church finally goes on strike. It's pissed off about these laws that Calles has put forward. By going on strike, basically it means that there's no funerals, no baptisms, no marriages at this time. And remember, 90% of Mexicans are Catholic. And this strike lasted 3 years, and it really dominated Calles' presidency. So how does he respond? Well, he began closing Catholic schools. He expelled priests that publicly denounced the government. He told the church, you either follow the Constitution or you rebel, and if you rebel, I will kill you. So they chose the path of rebellion, and 10,000 Catholic rebels would begin fighting government troops. This would be mainly in rural Mexico. It escalated the most in 1927 when Obregón was almost killed by 3 car bombs and gunshots. They say that a priest was responsible, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, that a priest was responsible, but it was on very, very faulty evidence. And there was a world outcry for this priest to be basically pardoned for this because he was so loosely connected. He had loaned the car that the attackers had used, and that's why Plutarco Calles wanted to make an example out of the poor priest. Anyways, it got so heated that America even had to come in and try to mediate between the church and Plutarco Calles. So definitely a darker time. Now, I got to show you this really interesting trailer for this movie. Hollywood actually did a film on the Cristero War in Mexico, so take a look.
Mexico is under siege. A plot to poison the minds and hearts of our people, to turn them into religious fanatics. This evil, this threat, it will not be tolerated.
We are an army fighting for God and for the church. We will fight with honor and dignity.
In the United States, we've been following your war with the Catholic Church.
I would hardly call it a war.
There is a time for peace, a time for war.
Even if I were younger, I would not fight.
You cannot fight for something you don't believe in.
I believe in freedom. The fate of Mexico is in God's hands, not yours or mine.
This will be one of the most important battles of our struggle.
If you lose this war, we're not going to lose this war.
Why are you here?
We want to be Cristeros.
Cristeros?
Yes.
We are going to send a message that freedom is our lives. And we will defend it or die trying. ¡Que viva Cristo Rey! ¡Que viva Cristo Rey!
Pretty nuts, right? Maybe I'll download that and we can watch it later in the year once IB exams are over. Here you can see some of the priests, a propaganda poster on the right of the martyred priests who lost their lives fighting against the Mexican government. It was pretty crazy. And here's that priest I was talking about, Miguel Pro. He became an international news piece when he, on faulty evidence, was basically executed. We can see him being executed by the Mexican army. This is a very religious time. It's not even before World War II, and to be killing a priest is kind of a big deal. 25 priests in total lost their lives under this banner, under this flag, Viva Cristo Rey y Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. Guadalupe is the patron saint of Mexico, the Virgin of Guadalupe. So that's today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed. Kind of ending on a dark religious note, but until next time.